Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm David Bowles, and today we're going to talk about reality and fakery, the counterfeit bargain. 21 violinists walked into a hotel room in Indianapolis in 2010. They were experienced soloists, people who had spent decades training their ears. The room was dimly lit. They wore modified welding goggles so they could not see the instruments. And they were handed violins, some worth $12 million, some worth a few thousand, and asked to play them, compare them, and choose the one they would take home. 2/3 chose a modern violin. The most selected instrument in the entire test was new. The least selected was a Stradivarius. That experiment opens my new book, The Counterfeit Bargain. And it opens the book for a reason that has nothing to do with violins. When the apparatus of prestige was removed, when the name, the provenance, the 3 centuries of accumulated myth were stripped away and only the sound remained, the superiority vanished. Same object, same listeners, different frame. What happens when you apply that test everywhere, not just to violins, to currency, to art authentication, to luxury goods, to theatrical performance, to the personas we construct on social media, to the white lies we tell at dinner parties, to the institutional fictions that hold democracies together, and to the synthetic media that is now dismantling the evidentiary infrastructure we depend on to settle disputes, prosecute crimes, and inform citizens. The book constructs a taxonomy, 9 categories of fakery, arranged along a spectrum from the most destructive to the most socially necessary. Counterfeiting sits at one end. The superdollar, a $100 bill so precise that Federal Reserve equipment could not reliably flag it, produced by a state-level operation attributed to North Korea. That is a fake designed to steal. At the other end sits the white lie. You look wonderful. That was a great presentation. I'm doing fine. Statements that are false, and that are also the infrastructure of every functioning social relationship you have. Remove them and watch what falls. Between those poles are 7 other categories, and each one describes a different relationship between the copy and whatever it copies. Han van Meegeren forged Vermeers that fooled the world's foremost art scholars. Daniel Fish directed, and Oklahoma on Broadway that honored every contractual word while gutting the original's meaning. Corporate brands manufacture characters that no individual consumer can challenge. Political campaigns sell pictures of reality to populations that cannot examine how the picture was produced. Each of these is a fake. They are different fakes. And the failure to distinguish among them, to sort the necessary fiction from the destructive fraud, the open performance from the hidden deception, is a failure with consequences that run from the personal to the civilizational. The book moves through 3 parts, and the movement is deliberate. Part 1 is about objects, coins, paintings, handbags, things you can hold, examine, and test against the original they claim to be. The superdollar and its monetary descendants. Wolfgang Beltracchi, who fooled scientific testing for decades and was undone by a single tube of paint. The Birkin bag, whose social signal cost 16 times more than the leather. In Part 1, the citizen's task is detection. Spot the fake among the genuine. Part 2 is about performances. Here the rules change because you cannot test a performance against an original in the way you test a counterfeit bill against a real one. When the Vienna Philharmonic plays Beethoven's Fifth, it is performing a copy, and nobody calls it a fake. When a cover band plays the same notes in a bar, nobody calls it art. Same act of reproduction, opposite social meaning. Authorized repetition is the concept that governs Part 2, and the authorization, it turns out, is a license to deviate. Orchestras depart from the score because they have the institutional standing to do so. Cover bands stay faithful because they do not. Part 3 is about systems, corporate personas, manufactured political realities, deepfakes. Here the stakes become civilizational because the fake is no longer an object you can examine or a performance you can evaluate. It is the environment you live inside. Walter Lippmann called it the pictures in our heads, the representations of reality that stand between the citizen and the world the citizen is asked to govern. When those pictures are manufactured by institutions whose interests differ from yours, and when you cannot tell the manufactured picture from the unmanufactured one, self-governance becomes a performance whose audience has lost the script. There is one more fake I need to tell you about, and this one is personal. The audiobook edition of this book is narrated by a synthetic voice. No human speaker performed those sentences. No breathing body made real-time decisions about emphasis, rhythm, or pause. I chose that deliberately, because the book demands it. 12 chapters, asking the reader to examine every bargain between the real and the fabricated, cannot end with the author making the safe choice for his own product. A human narrator would have been safe. It would have reassured the listener that the writer who analyzed the costs of fakery chose the authentic option when it came time to ship. The synthetic voice keeps the hook in place. It asks the listener to sit inside the bargain the book describes, to notice the artifice, to evaluate what is lost and what is preserved when the sign of a human voice is delivered without the substance of a human speaker. If the voice troubles you, the trouble is the point. If it does not, that is also worth examining. Every time you accept a substitute for the original, whether that substitute is a generic drug, a diplomatic fiction, a curated Instagram persona, or a deep fake recording of a voice you think you recognize, you are striking a bargain. On one side, cost savings, social harmony, creative freedom, persuasive power. On the other, material integrity, factual accuracy, personal authenticity, evidentiary reliability. Fakery cannot be eliminated. It is built into the structure of human commerce, communication, art, and governance, and it has been for as long as records exist. What can be cultivated is the capacity to see the bargain clearly, to identify what species of fake is operating, to understand what it costs, and to decide with open eyes whether the exchange is worth making. That capacity is what the book calls discrimination in the original sense of the word. To tell things apart, to observe differences that less careful observers overlook. Wine critics do this with vintages. Musicians do it with interpretations. Diagnosticians do it with symptoms. Citizens need to do it with fakes. All 9 species. Every day, because the alternative to discrimination is participation in a fiction that someone else designed, on terms you never examined, at a cost you were never asked to approve. The Counterfeit Bargain is available now from David Bowles Books. Ebook, paperback, and the audiobook with the synthetic voice that will either trouble you or teach you something about why it does not. Tools are on the table. Examination begins now. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles, wishing you a real evening and an authentic tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.